Welcome back to Sophie and Jumong Part 9. But before we jump into the episode, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right in. The door hadn't even finished closing when Madam Lee turned sharply. "Hey, Rin," she said, her voice like ice beneath velvet. "Stay calm." Hey Rin rose from the velvet seat, her voice uncertain. "He's changed." Madam Lee's eyes flared. "Then we remind him who he is." She stepped forward, heels clicking against the marble. "You will attend the anniversary. Dress as if the family name belongs to you. Smile like you've already won." Hayrin's throat tightened. "He said he's bringing her." Madam Lee raised her chin. "He's a man. Men wander, but they come home to legacy." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I did everything to protect his name. But he built this empire with his own hands. That doesn't mean he sees clearly now. We remind him where he came from. You are the woman I raised to stand beside him. The rest is noise." Hayrin nodded faintly, but her hands trembled. The night had cooled. Moonlight dusted the windshield of the Black Royce as Jumong drove with one hand on the wheel, but his mind wasn't on the road. It was on her. The way she had looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "I feel like I'm in the middle of something I don't understand," she'd whispered. And he'd told her, "You're the only thing in that crowd that matters." God, how he meant it. His phone buzzed softly in the console. "Sophie," he answered instantly. "Hey," his voice gentled. There was a quiet pause. Then, "Are you okay?" "I am now," she said. "I just missed you already." His lips curved slowly into a smile. He slowed the car. "I'm halfway there, but wait for me." He turned off at the next street and parked near a 24-hour flower shop tucked between two cafes. Minutes later, he stepped back into the car, a bouquet of white lilies and soft pink jasmine in the seat beside him. Their scent filled the space like memory and promise. She opened the door the second he arrived. Barefoot, robe tied around her waist, hair soft and loose. Her eyes met his, and everything inside him softened. "These are for you," he said, holding the flowers. She took them slowly, brushing his fingers as she did. "You remembered." "I always do," he said. They moved inside without words. The lights were low. The silence between them thickened, not awkward, but magnetic. She turned to arrange the flowers in a vase. He stood behind her. And then she turned, eyes wide, heart open. He took one step forward, cupped her face in both hands, and kissed her. They didn't rush. They didn't plan. Her hands slid up his chest. His lips moved along her collarbone, reverent, like a prayer. Her robe slipped slowly, and he stopped. The room spun with heat. He kissed her like he'd been holding back years of breath. Their bodies spoke what words could not. It was not perfect. It was human, real, full of hesitation, discovery, and a kind of tenderness that made it sacred. Afterwards, he held her close, forehead against hers. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," he said softly. "I couldn't stop feeling you," she answered. They drifted off under the hush of moonlight, skin against skin, hearts racing quietly in the same rhythm. And for a little while, the world outside didn't exist. Morning came gently, brushing the villa in gold. Sophie stood barefoot by the window, wrapped in a soft shawl, watching the long driveway disappear into the forested horizon. Her heart pounded quietly. When the driver called to say they were approaching, he glanced at Sophie. "Come," he said, voice low. They stepped out onto the front steps just as the black sedan curved into the drive. The car door opened, and there she was. "Gina!" Sophie called, her voice breaking into a laugh. Gina limped slightly on her healing ankle as she stepped out, but the smile on her face could have lit the sky. Sophie rushed forward and threw her arms around her. "I missed you," Sophie whispered against her shoulder, squeezing tight. "I missed you more," Gina murmured, holding her just as tightly. "You have no idea how scared I was." Behind them, Jumong watched quietly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He didn't interrupt. He just let them have it, this moment that belonged only to the two of them. "I brought something," Gina said, pulling back with bright eyes. She reached into her tote and handed Sophie a folded envelope. "From my parents." Sophie blinked. "Your parents?" "They wrote it last night. Said to give it to you by hand." Sophie opened it slowly as Gina held her breath beside her. Inside was a handwritten letter. The words were simple, but they wrapped around her heart like sunlight. "Dear Sophie, we saw you on the news. We saw how he looked at you. If this is love, don't be afraid. You always have a home here with us. Come visit when you can. Love, Gina's Umma and Appa." Sophie blinked, then pressed the letter to her chest. Gina was grinning through tears. "I told you they'd love you." Sophie laughed, her throat tight. Jumong stepped forward then, gently taking Gina's small bag from the driver and nodding toward the entrance. "Come in. Breakfast is waiting." As they walked into the villa together, Sophie leaned into Gina, whispering, "Everything's changing." Gina looped her arm through hers. "Let it." From behind, Jumong watched them both, these two women who had somehow cracked open his carefully guarded world. And somewhere in his chest, something warm and unfamiliar stirred again. Later that morning, soft sunlight spilled into the villa's private study. "Come in," he said. Gina stepped inside, moving with more ease despite the faint limp from her healing ankle. She looked around the elegant room, her eyes wide with quiet awe. "You called for me?" she asked playfully. "Do I owe you rent now?" Jumong smiled faintly, then motioned to the seat across from him. "Sit." She lowered herself into the chair, the softness nearly swallowing her whole. "You and Sophie," he began slowly. "You've both been through a lot lately. I wanted a moment to talk." Gina nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for being the first friend Sophie made here. You made her feel seen. That matters more than you know." Gina looked surprised, then lowered her gaze. "I didn't do much. She's the one who made me feel like I wasn't alone." Jumong took a slow sip from his cup and set it down. "I've been thinking," he said. "After the anniversary, I'd like you to invite your parents over. I'd like to meet them." Gina blinked. "My parents?" "Yes. This house is open to them. You are part of what's important now." Gina tilted her head, smiling. "You're very kind, you know that?" He smiled gently, not answering that. Then, after a moment, his tone softened further. "I also want you to know, if you ever need anything at all, you can come to me. Not as a CEO, just as someone who sees you, someone who's like an older brother." She didn't know about the tumor, not yet. The doctors had briefed Jumong in private after her hospital scan. A small mass, hidden, but potentially dangerous. They had agreed not to tell her until the next tests confirmed if it was growing. And until then, Jumong would carry the weight himself. He would protect her quietly. Gina leaned back and looked around. "This house, it's not just beautiful. It feels like something is healing in here." Jumong looked toward the window again. "Then let's make sure it stays that way." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Not romance, not obligation, but a gentle, protective bond, woven through gratitude, warmth, and the kind of care that needed no permission. After talking to Hayrin, the door clicked shut. Jumong's mother could still hear his voice, the softness, the resolve, the finality. Her son. Her only son. Her everything in this world. And he had looked at her like she was a stranger. A breath shuddered out of her, and then she turned, swiftly, sharply, and swept her arm across the table. A vase shattered against the wall. A stack of papers tumbled to the floor. "How dare he?" she whispered, her voice raw. "How dare he choose her?" Her knees buckled into the chaise lounge, and for a brief moment, she collapsed into herself. Her fingers gripped the edge of the fabric as though it would anchor her to the ground. Her carefully composed hair had loosened. Her voice cracked. "I carried him. I raised him. I built this world for him." A sharp sob escaped her throat as she pressed a trembling hand over her lips. He doesn't understand what this will cost, what it means. Her eyes burned with helpless rage. She had controlled ministers. She had held dinners where kings folded to her will. She had planned this family's rise from the ground up with blood, tears, and deals whispered behind closed doors. And yet now, he was slipping away to that girl. Because of her, she stood again, rigid, shaking, and reached into the hidden drawer behind the antique screen. Her fingers found the burner phone she kept only for matters outside protocol. With one flick, it lit up in her palm. She dialed. The line clicked. A voice answered, cold and alert. "Yes, madam." She didn't speak at first. Her throat constricted. Her heart raced. But then the pain turned to steel. "I need this fixed," she said, her voice low, controlled, deadly. "Quietly.